Hey guys, happy Thursday. Welcome to another episode of TMI with Maiekayla. And you guys, we have a beauty queen in the room. Can we give it up for Miss Owens? Hello, ma'am, also known as Miss USA American Nation 2024.
Hello. It's so funny how you said Miss Owens because I already know you said once I became a teacher, you were going to call me that.
Yes.
So I just hear that all
That
the time.
is your name in my contact. It is no longer Abria. And then this girl changed her number a bunch of times. So I have Abria Owens with the date. And I said, you know what, this is too much to keep up with. Now she just graduated. Oh my gosh. It's been a while since we've connected.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what we said last time on the show. But a lot has happened.
It has. I'm trying to think. Where were we? Oh, the last time I was on the show, we were talking about because you had just watched The Sound of Freedom.
Yes.
Which I finally have seen it since then. But we were just talking about just like awareness, having the right mentality, like educating yourself, like going into like the entertainment industry or the pageant industry, just to be like safe and all that good stuff. So that's the last time I was on here, and we were talking all that good stuff.
That was a while ago. I don't even, like a year ago or something?
Yeah.
All right, guys, this time Abria is in a new place. Last time she was she's still doing it. She was a beauty queen, photographer, modeling, doing all of these things. I think you had an event about to happen during that time, right? But now you're in a whole nother space. All right.
Yes.
This girl is about to go. You're still in school for your master, right?
Yep.
I pay attention. So Abria just graduated. She's now a teacher.
Yes,
ma'am.
yes.
You know, you really need to be called for that. If you ain't called for that, don't be a teacher, okay?
That's facts.
I think you're good with kids. If I were to go back to school, I would love to be your student, ma'am. But yeah, we also have a book or a few books that are out right now. She's also an author, you guys.
Hello.
Yes. I have your books right here. If you ever need a reader, Finding My Native Tongue, Who Am I?
Yes.
By Miss Abria Owens. And Metamorphosis. Did I read that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, I was like, hold up. I ain't gonna be a reader and I don't even know what I'm saying. Nunu's, right?
Yep, Nunu's Rabbit Hole. Yeah.
Nunu's Rabbit Hole.
It means little bird, right?
I don't know.
Well,
you tell me. You wrote the book.
Well, no, my Nana gave me that nickname, but she
cute.
got the name because she used to work in San Jose in the courthouse, and one of her good friends was Filipino. And she would say like Nunu. I guess she told her it meant little bird. So my Nana used to call me Nunu.
That's so cute.
And that book right there is like my life testimony about like how...
This one?
Yes.
I thought I read that one first.
Yeah, that one is all about like my beginning from childhood, overcoming these obstacles, how I was like in the occultic, practicing witchcraft, and then how God called me out of that.
Wow.
And just breaking it down and just shedding the light and just giving like information and just wanted to provide hope or just like a tool for like those who might be in that same space, like struggling with their faith, or maybe they're practicing certain things and been feeling like not right about it.
Yeah.
And then that book was like there to help. It's actually cool. A funny story. My roommate, she had a coworker who was like in that world, and she was struggling, like battling, like, should she be doing this? Should she not? And she asked for my book, and I gave it to her to give to her.
Nice.
And that girl, like, it helped her, like, you know, get the answers that she needed, and she fully ended up giving her life to Christ.
Wow.
And I was like so happy about that. I'm like, even if it was just touching one, that's all that matters.
Yes. No, that's true. I think sometimes when you get into like businesses or doing anything where it's like a public eye kind of deal, I think sometimes our head or we're thinking about like how many people or how many customers, how many people in the audience. But honestly, when you're in the will of God, it's who you're supposed to touch, even if that's one person.
Yes.
But no, that's awesome. I'm gonna be honest, I don't read books, okay?
That's okay.
But I bought it and I support it, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But I did read some of Finding My Native Tongue. So that is what the show
Yay.
we're touching on today. I read some of it. It's very poetic.
Yes.
Like, I think that's beautiful. You really need a creative mindset to read into this. But you had your book launch, when was it?
The 16th of November. Yes.
Oh, wow. It's
Date-
already December, y'all. That's
I
crazy.
know. Next
Well, when
thing
you guys
know-
watch this, it's probably January. So, but time is quick. It's gonna be a new year.
It has.
So, Finding My Native Tongue. During that time, I didn't know what you guys were talking about, but I participated in the group questions.
Your response was really good.
Yeah,
too.
it was good. Oh, thank you. Well, a lot of those responses were really good. We were talking about finding my native tongue, like what is the purpose, what is our purpose, and stuff like that. So I want to dive into that because I know actually you're talking about how this one is your testimony, and this is it talks about your purpose and diving into that, finding that, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's get into that. What is your purpose, Miss Owens?
Man, it's so wide. I would say overall, as I've been growing and just cultivating, I would say overall it's touching the youth and young adults and really encouraging people to be their authentic self. And with that, when you run with that and you find your identity, knowing who you are in God, you could do anything in life and everything is limitless. And that's where like Finding My Native Tongue came from. It's actually the first book I ever written.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I wrote this one, then my testimony book, and then I wrote the last book afterwards. But when I was writing this book, it was literally me coming like that old lifestyle. Like I said, I was practicing witchcraft. A lot has happened. I was losing friends. I just knew like I was partying like crazy. I just knew that there was so much more to life than what my day to day was bringing. And when you have like moments where you kind of like, well, I mean, it is TMI.
Yes,
this is
girl.
TMI with
Don't hold
Maiekayla.
it back.
Right. I mean, when you're waking up pretty like passed out, drunk on the stairs, you're just like, whoa, like this can't be it. Like there's got to
Yeah,
be so much
I got
more.
you.
And then everything just through life, like I love just touching people, encouraging people, and uplifting people. So I wrote the poem Prove and Push, and that's the first poem I've ever written, and that's what birthed this book. You just see like just me trying to find my next step in life, like my purpose, my identity, and just most importantly, just wanting to just heal the wounds that was happening from the inside and trying to figure that out. And this book is just overall about that journey of like finding yourself. And then once you're finding yourself, you're finding your purpose. And then the underlining heartbeat is God, like, which was so cool. And I wanted to write poetry in a way that even for those who don't believe in God, like you can still connect to my words, but not knowing like, you're getting little Jesus. Yeah, like little seeds in there. And I also tied like the seasons of the fall, winter, and spring and like nature, and I cultivated that like also going on a journey, and that's how I kind of put together the poems.
No,
and
that's
the
good. You like you said, you're some people, they may not believe in God, but I believe that your testimony will touch them even without them knowing that they're going to be preached to. Actually, where I experienced God the most wasn't even in the church. Actually, I ain't gonna lie. If I stayed in the church, nothing against my church, but I'm saying if I were to stay at that church, I would I ain't gonna lie. I would have probably I would end up doing like some spiritual bad stuff to people. But you're talking about witchcraft. How long were you practicing that?
A lot of people don't realize it. I mean, reflecting back, I didn't even realize it. you'll see, like, if you ever get to the testimony, I started very young at 12.
Wow.
Not even realizing. It all started with just like trying to worship the elements. My uncle was very heavily into witchcraft. He had the books from dark magic to light magic to wizardry, and what kind of got me into it is that I wanted protection. Like, when you grow up and you experience like abuse, the first thing you're thinking is like, I need power to protect myself. And that's what opened up that door of like, I need power to protect myself. I'm young. I don't want to experience this kind of abuse again. And that's what kind of opened up that door. And so I started very, very young. And then I dabbled in between, but like by the time I was like from 12 to 14, I was already reading like books about like metaphysics, and not say metaphysics is bad because it's good, but for me to understand how the earth work and energy, I knew I had to pay attention in school with like science, physics. I just knew I had to be knowledgeable. And then I started getting into frequencies. And then once I got into different books that broke down like spells and tarot cards, I noticed my journey went from like, oh, just only worshiping the earth, to the next thing you know, I'm like, okay, now I'm buying spell books. Now I'm getting tarot cards. Then now I'm trying to find a covenant, like all these different things. And then I will go to like these different spiritual parties, crazy, these drum circles. And I felt like as it was getting deeper, there was like this moment where I felt like God and the devil were just like battling for me, but the choice was in my hands. And God, of course, is like always there. But once I was all like, nope, I'm going this way, it was kind of like I was like, well, dang, my daughter, like, now my hand's gonna have to remove off of you because you're choosing the kingdom of darkness, even though I didn't know that I was. And yeah, and then literally whole story about like my grandmother's house had like a lot of like manifestation of activity and stuff happening. We try to get help. We try to reach out to like two famous psychics that's well known here in Vegas. I actually used to be apprentice for one. That's what people don't realize. Like,
you were rolling deep in this.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, girl. You want to know how I knew she was? She knew about spiritual warfare because one time I think we were in front of Starbucks and we were going through an event and I needed confirmation, and I was like spiritually sensitive to whatever God was telling me, and then you confirmed it too, and then all of a sudden we were sitting in the car and she started speaking in tongues, and then there you go. I was like, okay, this girl, she's in the spirit. She knows about spiritual warfare. She knows about this. But no, this is like the first time actually we're diving into like witchcraft and everything.
I remember you wanted to actually have a like talk about it like on here, and we never did. So now I'm laughing. I'm like, okay, I need the other book out so we can go in there deep. But no, I can pull from that off my head. But yeah, but yeah, that's kind of how it was. Like manifestation started happening. We started reaching out to different like psychics to come, the community that was well a part of, who did like cleansings of houses. They weren't responsive. There was like moments where I was like, am I on punk? Like, Ashton Kutcher, where are you? Because this right here,
crazy.
It's one of those things, like you see stuff in movies, but when you actually see stuff happen like in front of you, you kind of like just question reality for a while.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was like my whole family who's like seeing this, witness, we're like, okay, we're not crazy. We tried to I was even to a point where like we even tried to get pastors to come, but they didn't believe us, and we laughed because after my family overcoming everything, we laughed. It was like, dang, if they would have believed this could have made it like stop way more like sooner than it prolonging, because us dealing with like trying to move out the house and dealing with these like spirits and stuff manifested, it lasted for like 3 months.
Wow.
Like every time we moved, like it kept following and all that crazy. It's a crazy story. I'm not going into too much to detail because, you know, I don't want to shock the viewers, but so I'm just trying to generalize. But like when I say like dolls moving, car accidents, like that, yeah, it was crazy.
You know, I there's this pastor that I listened to. I forgot his name. He's like in a home like Georgia or something. But he was talking about he's very into spiritual warfare and
Mm-hmm.
casting out demons, and he used to do witchcraft as well. And the reason he was brought to God is because I guess there was a encounter that he had with demons in his room, and
Mm-hmm.
like he just started there's like dark movements everywhere, and like he was just throwing up and everything, right? And so that was his encounter, and basically, and I truly believe that if you've experienced that, you're anointed, like you understand the spiritual realm. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
think there's anybody else that understands it as much as you, meaning that you're also anointed to release other people too. So with that being said, I remember listening to his one of his like reels, and he was saying something about when you disobey God, you was it disobedience? Something about like you give the enemy legal right to have his
Yes,
hand over you,
yes.
right?
That goes back to like the example how I was saying that the deeper that I was getting into like practicing, the more and more and more it came to a point where like even though I'm not conscious and I'm thinking like I'm doing good because we have this term called light worker, light witch, all of it comes from the same source. Like people be like, but no, no, no. I'm like, if you have a lake and there's oil inside it that's been poisoned and the water is flowing down, you're still getting that toxic water.
Mm-hmm.
So it's from the same source. It's just people are putting another name on it. And a lot of the times it's not even that they're intentionally putting the name on it. They just think it's good because you have these platforms like well, I guess I'm calling out people today, like spirit science. I don't really see them around anymore. That's why I love. Is it Stephen Bancar's? I really loved his breakdown because he helped me getting free, watching his videos because he was making $1 million. He was part of the metaphysic world. I think he was friends with the person who created spirit science back then. But you have these big people who talk about like just meditations and chakras and all this stuff, and it comes off very light. But what happens is that the people who are following these people don't realize these people actually know these practices are from the dark arts because they like one of the biggest name on which I'm pretty sure everyone knows is Aleister Crowley. You look at him, there's another lady, I have her picture on my phone, I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but like they literally, and it's what makes it so easy to fall into. They take scripture. That's why it's a saying that the devil knows more than even believers or witches and stuff know more because they are aware because they don't, if you think of it like the military or war, they're the opposite. The enemies stay watching and opposing. And that goes back to like with that purpose, even tying back to finding my native tongue. The enemy stays on the watch to make sure you don't know who you are, so you don't fulfill your purpose here on this earth. And a lot of times when it comes to fulfilling purpose or like, well, I want to do this, like it just seems like there's rules and regulations. Like, no, God have things in place to protect you. It's not saying you can't have it. There's a time and a place for it. Maybe you're just not ready for it in that time or that season, but a lot of people know their gifts before they understand it, and that's how the enemy get them. Like a lot of psychics, mediums, they're actually most likely like prophets flowing in the prophetic. They just miss their mark and they don't realize that they're actually doing work for the opposite. And then too, when you're not brought up in a church that it's actually very well rounded, where there's biblical sound teaching, teach you and it's Holy Ghost filled, meaning led by the Holy Spirit. If there's not that balance and then there's logical understanding and talking about real things, it really mess up people because then some person might think they're going crazy because they're having dreams or having nightmares, and maybe they don't realize like, oh, I'm just called to a particular thing. This is what I'm supposed to pray for. So if they don't have the right discipleship, it can cause a lot of misleading, cause a lot of just it could just cause a lot of like different paths and narratives. So that's why like community is so important. And then too, going back to the church, like don't want to how can I say this? Don't want to put my name on nobody or nothing, but like the church has been worldly influence.
Yeah.
We in a lot of that, they care about show. Like you will have people like, oh, well, they give all this money to me so they can sit in the row, they get the special treatment. And that's not how the foundation of the church is not supposed to be like. It's supposed to have love. It's supposed to be spiritual filled, like worshiping in spirit and truth, like, you know, being givers, have unity, community. But we don't see a lot of that. And then a lot of people get hurt by the church, and hearing different experiences that people have encountered, or even to parents, who've been, you know, forced and not really actually understanding relationship, then telling their kids, you see why people want to pull away from it. And if you have people being hypocritical in this space too as well, then it's hard. But I always encourage people, like, don't focus on the people, focus on God. Like, if the people is being hypocritical, okay, don't let that get in the way of what God has for you. Yeah. And then if you're in an unhealthy church situation, then this is where you need to pray and ask your church home, God, what kind of church do you need me to be at? Because the church is supposed to cultivate you, strengthen you. It's literally supposed to build you so you can go out, go take over these platforms like entertainment, government, and be like, have a good heart and good intention, you know, and not with all this corruption.
I think also because there's never a perfect church either. So you have to also question yourself, if there's something wrong going on in your situation or at the church. Like, are you in the place to leave and find a better church that fits for you, or are you in the place to change the situation there? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, because even for me, like my whole church experience, I'm grateful that I grew up already with God. So that there's a difference. You could be a church goer, but if your relationship with God isn't there, like you're going to be shifted so quick, like with any circumstance. And it's hard. I ain't gonna lie. Even for me right now, even though I've been a Christian for all my life, I hate saying this, but I feel like I'm in a place right now where I'm relearning the Bible. Like, I'm relearning everything, because I ain't gonna lie, I feel like this whole election thing, like I've seen so many different things in different point of views, that it really did make me question some stuff about my own beliefs. And I think you just have to be careful with churches being moved by people's emotions. And being moved by, I heard somebody say this, that sometimes the churches are preaching so much about deliverance, but we're not preaching enough about freedom. So a lot of us, like, yeah, we could cater to our feelings, but and to our current situations, so we can get out of that. But there's going to be a time where you have to also surrender to God, and you have to be in a place of obedience. Like, how long do you expect yourself to be catered to? You know, so I think a lot of people, we're all just in different spaces, different levels in our spirit and in our relationship with God. But no, this is good, girl. I got lots of questions. So you were in you were doing witchcraft, practicing that. So my question is, because I believe that our gifts could be used for good, or it could be used for evil. Like, if you know how to sing and stuff, it could be used for the glory of God, or it could curse people. So like you were talking about psychics and stuff like that. My question is, are psychics, are they, what they're saying, is it real? Is it true? Or are they lies?
So this is the thing. There's a thing called familiar spirits. The enemy can know a lot about your past, but the only being that can know your future is God. Even if you went like I went, and there was things that was told to me that I was like, whoa, like no one does not know this, except for like me, like, but, and then of course if they try to give you the future, if you're thinking this constantly going back, God created us like in his image. And with that being said, like what makes us so special and why the enemy, the devil, is so a hater, we can literally take thought and manifest it to physically. Like that's what makes us as cool as human beings, as many creators. We can literally take thought and bring it to here. That's why the enemy is always after our mind. That's why it says, if you think it, like, shall you be it. So with them, what happens is there's familiar spirits. When we're born, we're assigned an angel and we're assigned a demon. Going back to, let's talk about, for those who can relate to sports, when you are on a sport and you know you have a game coming up, you're always watching that team, right? So you can learn their movement. You're learning your opponent. Even when it comes to fighting, our UFC fighters or boxers, you're watching your opponent and you're doing what you can to prepare that fight, so you know how to be on the defense. Well, the enemy does the exact same thing with us. So if psychics or medium are interacting with familiar spirits, they're talking to, like, familiar spirits, which are like another form of demons, to get that information about you. That's what a familiar spirit is. So that's why if you were to go get a reading and they were to say something that's truthful, it's because they're pulling for something from your past. Yeah.
So, but they can never say anything for your future.
Yeah. Yes. They don't know, and that's the thing. The future is always changing.
Got you.
Yes.
Okay, no, that's good
And
to know.
if something comes, the seed has been planted, so you've been birthing that outcome.
My question now, when you were practicing witchcraft, were bad things happening to you, or were good things happening?
So at first, good things were happening. Like, as I was doing my apprenticeship, I was doing Reiki. I was actually one step away from being a Reiki master.
Wow.
Yeah. I was building my business, and then it came crazy. I broke my leg. I got in a car, like, I lost my keys, my car got messed up. It was just like, after a while, things kept happening. What a lot of people don't, spirits know, the spiritual realm knows, but what people don't know, it's so funny, because even with things like, we know about the law of attraction, we hear that there's books about that. Well, that's an earthly law. That's actually not spiritual at all. It's so funny how a lot of these spiritual practices are actually like earthly law and earthly things. So of course it's going to happen. That goes back to, you reap what you sow, because that's just there. It's even in the Bible. You're reaping what you sow. But what happens is there's a loophole. So with that, the spirits always come and collect. You don't, and that's why when people don't realize, when you do get into witchcraft, even if you're on the light surface level, eventually you're going to have to do some sacrifices. And if it don't, it's going to collect and affect you. That could be, that collection could be like mentally losing your mind, not understanding and not having that peace. It could be harm to another person, that things that happen, that you open up doors that affect your family. It comes in all different prices until you're able to give up a sacrifice. But how often are people really up to do that, unless they're really just, they're desperate, they want that power, they want to look for that. And when I mean sacrifice, I'm talking about animal and human sacrifice. Like, they don't think that stuff is real, but it is. Like, cutting of the chickens. I had a dance friend, she worked in a graveyard. It scared her doing her graveyard shift, because she will always find beheaded animals and stuff on graves, are just out there. Yeah.
So that pastor is saying, I have to find out his name.
Is it John Ramirez?
He looks Hispanic. He's with a black lady. They're married. He has a beard.
I don't know. It might be John Ramirez, because I've read a lot of his stuff, because I know John Ramirez used to be an ex-Satanist, and he breaks it down. I used to be like, oh, I knew I wasn't crazy. Like, even the strategicness of putting a liquor store in a neighborhood is literally like spirit, like principalities. That's what they call, like, more higher level up, like demons or spirit, like in those areas, to cause those harm. Like, when people practice like witchcraft and stuff, like I said, there's the lighter side and then there's the darker side. They're all the same thing, but like, people literally like do things to people, go to their doors, putting curses and praying for like rape and death, like going to playgrounds, like crossroads,
dolls and all that stuff.
all that stuff. And in each culture there's a different name for it.
Let me tell you guys, because when I was going through what I was going through, that's why I kind of said it earlier, but I didn't dive into it. But I remember being so angry that I was like, not that I didn't believe in God, but I was being impatient with God. Like, I wanted the people who did me wrong. It's crazy, because I was in a place, no matter how much good was happening to me, I was like, I want these people to suffer. And there was a point in my mind, like, I'm about to like do some voodoo on them. Like, I'm telling you, and I the thing that stopped me is because I knew God's hands, so that's why that was the only thing that stopped me, because I already knew if I were to go that route, I was gonna get punished. It's gonna clap back to me. And I know that they're in prayer. I need see. This is the thing. Even though these other people, they're Christian, we're all in our own different paths.
journeys,
So
yeah.
the thing is, this it's really a spiritual. It's about spiritual principles. It's not about who the person is.
Right.
It's about spiritual principles. So even though I know that these people were wrong, and God knows that they were wrong, but there's a spiritual principle there that if I were to practice witchcraft and try to put like a curse on them or
Yeah.
whatever, it was going to clap back at me, no matter even if they were wrong or right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So the and even satanic people, they understand that no matter if there's a battle, because it even says in the Bible, this is why I don't care what other people says, you have to really read your words so you understand the promises that God has. Because if it says that every battle is God's victory, that means that even no matter how bad Satan wants to like throw something, it's God's victory. So
Yes.
meaning, like, that's your promise. You just gotta rest in that.
Yeah.
So no matter how scary things could get, if you're confident in God's hands, his hands are over it. So I already knew, even if I were to throw something like demonic at them, it would have been thrown back at me. But I wanted to say this because that pastor I was telling you about on Instagram, he was talking about like African voodoo. There's like this lady, she has a store,
Yeah.
and it was so successful and everything, but the reason it was successful is because she was doing African voodoo. So she would go to her master and come back with like a powder, and her business kept growing and growing.
Yeah.
And what happened was, I guess a pastor told her, he gave her a warning after going back multiple times. He said that if you don't give this up, you're going to, when you come back, you're going to end up dead. So, and then what happened is she ended up dead.
Yeah.
So it's like earlier when I was asking you, like, hey, was good things happening to you? Were bad things happening? It was good in the beginning, but then now you gave the enemy legal right to
Yeah.
go ahead and mess up your life. And
Yeah.
then there you go. You're like, you started getting into accidents, da 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 da. So I know the world preaches like success in this, da 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 da, but sometimes like the success, it's a disguise of the devil.
Yes.
So I don't accept every blessing if it's not from God.
Yes.
But no, this is some good information, ma'am.
Yes. No, and it is, because I think especially now that we're in a world that everything is bold, and now it's like if something demonic is presented, it's like, oh, it's art. It's like,
Yeah.
no, like even when working with my kids, or if they're going through something, I'm a big firm believer in whatever your gifts are or your talents, use that also as an outlet to be able to release. I believe God give us gifts too. So we have that way to be able to release, to cope, and also too, to be able to use those to honor him. But there comes a point where you glorify your trauma. That's why when I talk about
Yes.
being abused as a kid, like SA, I'm very intentional depending on the audience that I have, the age group that I have, and what I'm working with, because I will talk about that so they can relate, and if they need help in that avenue, and create that safe space to help them and then provide them resources. But I tell them 100%, I don't glorify it. Like, I'm not
Correct.
going to use this for my motivation, my purpose,
Yeah.
to help me get through things, because then it comes to a point where like now we're glorifying this trauma, and now
Correct.
we're not working about healing. We're talking about the
Correct.
trauma.
See, I'm glad you're saying that,
Just like
yeah.
with problems, we talk about the problems. What's the solution? Like,
Yes.
what is the solution? Going back to how you were even just saying just a lot, even during with this past election, I already had a feeling, like I felt it in my spirit.
No, we
This is
talked
why I
about
think-
yeah.
Yeah, but this is why I prayed, and I just said, you know what, Lord, I want to be led. Like, I would never tie myself to either. And I watched this podcast, and there was these two men from both sides of the political party, and how they both started the conversations like, for anything, like, we need to talk about civility and how to be civil. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like it was so nice to be educated in that way, because a lot of people are not civil anymore.
No, it's
and
not.
what's that like? And it's so crazy because the word citizen comes from like civil, and it's like us as people, we need to learn how to be civil and like really to listen to understand. And how they both talked was just so good and so informative on both
Open-minded.
sides. And they both said it to 100%. They said they don't identify with their parties. Their parties, because they actually work in the government, it's a tool. And then if their party is doing something wrong, it's our responsibility. And they're both for Christian too. They were like, it's our responsibility to call it our own party. Like, hey, no, this is not okay.
Yeah.
I see you stand on these, but this right here is not okay.
Correct,
And I
correct.
thought that was just so nice. And it kind of gave me like peace. And then I just kind of hope that like people around would just like, don't get caught up, because the media, those who are in power, they will want us to think angrily and
Yes.
fearful. And that's all but the enemy. And that's
Yeah.
another thing too. What spirits are behind certain people?
Correct.
Those are things we always have to look at. One thing, I had to sit and laugh. Whether I'm teaching, working with people, with family, it does not matter. One thing I say strongly, I'm always spiritually alert. I don't go into anything without being alert. And then if I'm working something, I'm always like, God, help me be the best space. Even if the opposite person is being so nasty. And from the outside, someone could look like I'm being a people pusher or a people pleaser, or letting someone treat me badly. In the past, yes, but like I've gotten to a space where I'm like, I'm focused on the mission. If the mission is these kids walking down this fashion show and making sure they're taken care of, and the parents, and you're good and smoothly, that's the focus. Even if you snap at me, like, I don't even care, because right now this is not my mission, and I know who I am. And then I know I'm here in this space to making sure everyone is good. And then to be able to keep moving and not be affected by that. But other people will can't handle that, or this and that. But
that comes with really spiritual maturity, because if you're not spiritually mature, you can't take that on. You know what I'm saying? Until you're spiritually matured.
Yeah.
Because, like, let's say somebody gets feisty. Like, I get a parent that's feisty. Like, myself without Jesus will react a certain way. And, like, listen.
Period.
All right? I'll be like, listen, okay, I'm the teacher. And at this point, I don't even care. I'm off the clock, homegirl. You know what I'm saying? But then it's like, what did God call us to do? Right? So, for example, like, let's bring it back to the pageant. I remember, like, I didn't win my competition, but I felt like I got everything that God wanted me to receive through that pageant, right? So everybody else's head was like, you're supposed to be number one. You're supposed to compete for the crown. And I don't know why. In my head, I was like,
I am the queen.
I wasn't even thinking about winning the crown. I just wanted whatever God's purpose was for me. It's like when you walk in front, let's say, as a teacher, right? Let's say people's idea of what your goal should be is to take care of the kids, follow the rules, and all that stuff. But what happens if God wanted you to be in those places for a different reason? What happens if God wanted you to be in that place because you got a student named Jamal, he going through it and he's about to kill himself and you're supposed to speak to him. You know what I'm saying? I don't think people understand, like, there's purpose behind everything. So I'm not concerned about fulfilling the success of other people's thoughts on me. You know? Girl, thank you for the reminder today.
Hey, let's go. Get it. No, as you should, because sometimes too, when we get such used to mundane things and just doing things out of routine on the go, we will forget that. And not only that too, because we're being used and so pulled, like I'm a very social person, but ever since I started teaching, I'm like, dang, I don't go out as much, I don't socialize
I was thinking about that too with me.
Like all these different things, but my job is very socially stimulating, like from kids and this and that, and then terminology, and then trying to put that in with school. But I'm always so drained. Like my one friend literally told me like a week and a half ago, like, do we need to put you in a senior citizen home? Girl, because I'd be out by like 6-7 o'clock at night. Like I'd be like knocked out, but I do wake up like excited for purpose. And everything that I've done, from like pageantry, from dancing to writing, I bring that to my classroom. Like, I have my stuff up on the walls, or every time I do something, I show my kids, like, hey, no matter what your path is, you have an opportunity to do this. Like, I'm letting you know, if your teacher did it, you can do it too.
Yeah.
And I'm here now, so you guys can use me. You guys can use me as this step stool, as this platform. And I encourage them to write. Before we went on break, the last experiment that I had them do, it was something I learned in my class, and it broke my heart, going back to how you said, what if like Jamal's about to, hurt himself.
Yeah, we just made a Jamal. Jamal is.
We just making up names. And there's been a lot of things that I've caught in my classroom that kids have struggled, like, and everything that I have been blessed with, I've been able to use those things to like help. For example, I know like my church, they get donations from Chick-fil-A, and if there's leftovers, they're like, you guys want to take some? I'll take that and put it in my refrigerator at school. So when there's a certain kid who I know who's not eating or don't have food at home, I'm like,
nice.
hey, you got food? Here you go. Like, things like that. Those who need an outlet, hey, let's write. But if you want to write a book, let's get you published. Or if I have another book signing, I actually was supposed to have a student to come to my book signing, but she couldn't make it. But she literally worked for 2 months writing her own little short story, and I was going to let her have a moment to present that, because going back to that youth, like, there are now and there are our future, and kids are so precious, even though they drive you crazy. Ba ba ba, you want to ba 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 sometimes, and their parents, but they're such a gift. And sometimes you can get so caught up, and then just hearing them laugh, them telling a story, and just want to like talk to you, like, it's such a blessing. And to be able into a space to be something for someone that growing up I didn't necessarily have, is just such an honor, and it's such a blessing, and I wouldn't change it for the world. Like, it's such a best place to be. I'm like, I see everything that I went through is for this moment. And yeah, my kids are my babies. They get on my nerves,
Is
but
to
I
guide
love
that
them.
person, is to lead that person. No, I love that. I feel like, how I was saying, I feel that this election made me restudy the Bible, right? Because I remember there was a season I was like, I know it. Like, I don't know what you're gonna say, but I already know what you're gonna say. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I already, like, that's how in tune I was with God. And with that being said, I think for a while I was more of like, whatever the sign is, God, you give me a sign. Which is good that you're dependent on God, but sometimes that gives the enemy like perfect room to throw something at you to disguise it and make it look like it's God's sign. So sometimes you got to be careful if you're someone that's like very discerning. Discernment is good, but you have to always be careful that you're not mixing God's voice with another voice, right?
Yes.
Or you got to make sure that you're not mixing discernment with being judgmental
or an intuitive.
Yes.
Because intuitive, you have your instinct, but discernment is
Correct.
actually being led by the Holy Spirit.
Correct.
That.
And then I feel like I started like waiting on everybody else's confirmation, right? And then that I felt like the things that God was calling me to do, like the gifts of leadership and stuff, I'm holding back now, because I'm waiting on everybody else to give me a confirmation, and even I'm waiting on other Christian leaders to give me confirmation. And then I was like, there's something like not settling in my heart when I listen to certain people. And this is the reminder: no matter how long a Christian has been a Christian, you have your weaknesses, right? And no matter how high up a person is in their church in leadership positions, like, they have their weaknesses. So what I'm saying is that we all have a specific anointings on us. So no matter how long somebody's been rocking in a specific field, maybe you're supposed to be the one that's supposed to change that. You know what I'm saying? So I felt like that was kind of like my shift with God. Like, he was telling me, like, Maiekayla, you're getting all of these senses from me. Like, I need you to speak on it instead of waiting on other people. But there's a part in the book I highlighted that I thought was very nice.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Ooh,
It's underlined. Page 6.
Page 6. Okay, cool.
I actually don't like the number 6, but
Hey, you know what? I used to not like the number 6, but it means man. by itself. And sometimes it's a good reminder, like, am I in my flesh, or what do I need to get in order for 7, because 7 is completion. So it's not really bad. It's only bad when it's tripled.
Oh, I got you, girl. You know what? I kid you not. I have little cousins, and when I was teaching them the numbers and stuff, 6 don't exist. All right. So if their math is wrong, just know it was me that taught them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. All right.
That's funny.
All right. So it says in here, I'm a little girl and I should not speak. This little girl will be big one day. So understand. I highlighted that because it's so crazy, because there's actually a Bible verse that talks about like not underestimating the younger generation or the youth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I like this because I do business and all of that stuff, but I'm always ending up in a place where I'm like with older people.
Yeah.
And there are people that's gonna look down on you, and there are people that just doesn't even give you the time of day to even like, oh, her opinion matters. But what I love about this is because if you are anointed and if God gave you the confirmation, if God has a plan for you, it's gonna happen, whether there's age barriers or anything. So I really love that part that you put in there, especially you're a teacher. And I really feel like you have the type of mindset where you see their potential already, so you're feeding into it. Because I'm like, growing up, there has been people that told me like, oh, you're just a kid, like, and there's times where like, oh, you're not allowed to talk. Like I was told, you're a kid, do not talk. And then it's just crazy to me because like for the people that didn't put those barriers on me, and like they made my feelings validated, my dreams, all of that, I felt like that poured into something bigger. So what I am gonna say, don't underestimate the young ones.
No, there's so much it's so much into them. And I wrote this because I wrote this book back in 18 or 17? It was 2018 when I wrote this book. And going back to, I'm so happy you connected to that, because that's literally that moment, being young or being little and trying to find your voice. And it's hard because when you use it, no one ever listens, or they shut you down too quickly because you're too young to understand, or you don't understand what that means. So then when you're in the position, when you know you should say something, you're hesitant. You're like waiting for the perfect moment, or going back to, you're waiting for that confirmation. And that's pretty much what this whole poem was like, about that. But also too, this poem was about my abuse as well.
I wanted to get into that.
I
highlighted another sentence
about
that.
We could get into it.
So it says, your little girl laid in the closet or under the bed, looking at the dark spaces and wanted to be dead. The next page is, bodies I pleased, bodies. I let them take me, not understanding my worth. Those bodies, girl, who am I reading in front of a teacher? Those bodies did not care. They left me in the dirt. So, girl, let's touch base on that. Like, I have my own thoughts about what was going on, but tell me what you were thinking. Tell me what.
First, let me think your first reaction, and then I'll go.
You want to hear my reaction?
Yes, because it's I wrote these in the ways where I wanted my audience, of course, try to connect to what I was feeling, but what's the thought, what's the picture that comes to you, like your interpretation, what are your thoughts? And then
so I imagine like you're hiding and you're scared and you're hoping somebody's there to like save you, but nobody's there to save you. And then the other part on page 7, this is a book club, y'all. I've never been part of a book club. It's talking about bodies I please and all of that stuff, right? Gosh, okay, so
it's real, it's getting raw.
Gosh,
it's getting raw today.
So crazy. Oh my gosh, Jesus, go ahead, say, oh my gosh, Jesus, how much time do we got? So I mean, I was thinking about like body counts and stuff, and like how many people we pleased and everything that for people that didn't last, right? And ladies, let me just tell you, okay, sex is not going to keep them around, all right? It could do it
Say
just
it
a
loud.
little bit just to get them interested in you, but it's not going to keep them around. You're going to have to do a little bit more
Facts.
than give your body.
Facts.
Um,
Because it's just a snack to them at this point.
it is. I mean, you know, sometimes that's good. Like you a snack, but how long that gonna last?
But you want to
for?
be the whole meal, the appetite, the
Yes.
full, you know, everything. But yes, no, that was literally for that part head on. The first part was just like literally like I used to be a kid, like always just crying under my bed. My bed and the closet always were my safe spaces for me.
Yeah.
Just to release. And then going back to with the bodies I please, it wasn't just even how you just said about like just sex too. Me trying to cope with everything, learning like very young, like, oh, this is all you want? You can get that, point blank, period. Like,
Yeah.
I know I can have control in this way as long as if I
Did you feel like that was a
allow it.
power move for you?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I took pleasure in emasculating men. I took pleasure in it.
Like,
very
it
demonic.
it felt like a power move, right?
It was because if I controlled it and said yes to it, it wasn't really
Like it's my
hurting.
say here.
But yes, and but also too, bodies also friendships or family members, just trying to still be that perfect daughter, be that perfect person. Out of the friend group, I was the mother, so trying to take care of everyone, and then getting treated also like dirt at the same time. Like I was just a rag. Like I was only needed to clean up something.
Yeah.
But never fully valued as the being as I was. And it's crazy because like last year, it clicked to me where I was like, even though I've healed and you know all that from all this, it was crazy to me when I realized I understood relationships to me was transactional. Relationships were not supposed to be transactional. Like,
Girl, I'm still learning about relationships.
you meaning that whatever I do for you, you do for me. It's a transaction. Relationship is not like that at all. It's a form of agape love, like learning to love. Like people are at different phases in their
Loving
lives.
even if you don't receive love.
Yes, but when you're at a point where going back to knowing who you are, because who he says he is, when you know you get your everything from him, you're not going to lack when you're just giving love freely
Yeah.
in that sense, because then it goes back.
Love doesn't always. Hold up, we gotta clean that up because love doesn't mean you get taken advantage of and you
Yes.
give up your body,
No,
all of that.
you
So
have
we're not
you
even
have
just talking
boundaries.
about sex. Like,
Yeah, I'm talking about just in general, just relationships in general. Like you have to have boundaries, but that's going back to still loving yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you love yourself, you're going to have boundaries. You're going to be like, oh no. But understanding like you can give something like a stranger. If I see a stranger and we start talking, I'm instantly going to give them love. And then they're sharing their story. I'm like, oh wow, like you're amazing. Like I value you.
yeah.
So that's where that came into just understanding, and they didn't care, and I just felt left in the dirt, like I'm just done in here. And usually when we're done with trash, we throw it in the dirt or on the side. Like, how do we treat trash? So that was the visualization that I was getting at with my words.
No, that was. Thank you. You know, okay, so I wanted to have this conversation. It was always in the back of my mind, but I think I was always scared to have this conversation. But I feel like it's needed for whoever's supposed to hear it. And I think I need it for my own release as well. But wow, this is like for a part 2.
For real, because I was like, I know we've been on here talking for a minute.
I know. All right, you guys, we got the message that we got to close this conversation.
Yes.
But Abria, thank you so much. Thank you so much for
you
being
for having
vulnerable.
me.
And I
Yeah.
thank you for your obedience to God, because your obedience to God is going to bless other people.
Thank you.
But thank you so much. Any last words you want to say before we close out?
Thank you for having me. Thank you guys who are going to tune in and listen. Thank you, Maiekayla. Thank you, Phil Radio. Is that how you say it?
PHLV Radio.
You guys actually say the word. Okay, PHLV Radio. Thank you for
girl.
having me, and I'm blessed to be here. Thank you.
Aw, thank you guys. All right, make sure to get her on social media so you guys could get your guys' books.
Yay.
Thank you guys.